Welcome back, everybody. My name is Lionel Gardner. I'm in charge of the state of Sonny Liston. We are the business boxing side of the family, the side of the family that called him Sonny. Today, I'm going to read from the narrative summary of the autopsy report, which is close to 20 pages long. I'm going to talk about the coroner's report narrative summary, which states what happened when Geraldine found Sonny. Also, I'm going to read from the Showtime special Pariah, The Lives and Deaths of Sonny Liston, written by Simon George, which is he directed and produced the Showtime special, and he wrote it. There's a scripted documentary. But anyway, and the show is based on SHAUN ASSAEL's book, The Murder of Sonny Liston, Las Vegas, Heroin, and Heavyweights. So let's get into it. Also, I'm going to read from the investigative worksheet. Now we're dealing with the premise, the hypothesis that Geraldine Liston, which when before she died, she said to me that no one knew Sonny like I knew Sonny. I was always by his side. All they want to talk about are the lies. So that's what I based my hypothesis on. You know, I needed to prove her hypothesis. Does she know more than most people? Basically, she said, no one knows Sonny like I knew Sonny. I was always by his side. All they want to talk about are all their lies. So that is my hypothesis. No one knew Sonny like I knew Sonny. So I set out to find the facts to see if what she said is true. I started my work in 2005, and I finished it in 2020. And I set out to find the facts, and which I noticed when I started my research, there was a lot of anecdotal evidence, assumptions, and innuendo, and no facts. So I said, I'm going to find the facts. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to get the official records, and that's what I set out to do. And by 2020, I had acquired all the official records of Sonny Liston life and death. So what I wanted to do was set the record straight about how Sonny lived and died. So I'm going to share this with you. This is the first time ever we're breaking down the autopsy report and the postmortem and toxicology, which will come later. This is a very extensive report, and I don't want to jump the gun. So I hope you guys can be patient with me, and I'm going to read from the Showtime special that came out November 2019 and finish its run in January of 2020. Okay, and I just want to say that the title of the Showtime special, The Murder of Sonny Liston, Las Vegas Heavyweights, Las Vegas Heroin Heavyweights, is a title that's very problematic because it flies in the face of Geraldine Liston, of what Geraldine Liston said to me. She said that if Sonny would have died of unnatural causes, she never would have got the life insurance policy. So Sean's calling the show the murder. So if Sonny was murdered, she wouldn't have got his insurance policy. Geraldine Liston would not have got Sonny's insurance policy. If Sonny would have died of an overdose, she wouldn't have gotten his insurance policy, his life insurance policy. So heroin, him putting heroin in the mix in his title is problematic. And Las Vegas, yeah, they live in Las Vegas, but Sonny never hung out with black thugs. and his writing partner was my uncle Charles Gardner. He rode in his he rode with him in Geraldine's Cadillac, um, and there was no phone in the car. I mean, this whole idea of checking the records of Sonny in Showtime special. They've got the phone records and this and that. That Sonny had no phone in the Cadillac. Um, and I'll get to that later. But let's get to the truth here. Um, Now, there's an issue here. You have. I need to explain the police department in 1971. Uh, the Las Vegas Police Department was two departments originally. It was the uh, Clark County Sheriff's Office, and you had the Las Vegas Police Department. There were two, and one of them was in Clark County. So, but they were combined departments, and they had a sheriff in charge of both. Okay, and it was Las Vegas and Clark County combined departments. Now, I don't know. There've been Dennis Caputo. I think it's Dennis A. Wyman, uh, Gary Beckwith, and now Larry Gandy that said they were there at the house. They were first to arrive at the house to find Sonny dead and find drugs in the house. But at the same time, they're saying that Geraldine hid the drugs. So they're saying the question they have in the TV show or the Showtime special is they have a Shaun has a discrepancy because Shaun's one of the I think he's the executive producer of the show, but he wrote the book. The show is based on his book. Um, he says there's a there's a time gap between a problem between the time Geraldine called the cops and the time she called the cops. His issue is why did she take so long to call the cops? He says she found Sonny. He says he found Sonny at 9, and then she didn't call the cops till 12, 9 p.m. to 12 p.m. So at that time, he's saying that she hid Sonny's drugs because in the film and in the past, the rumor is that there were drugs found on Sonny, bag of heroin, bag of marijuana. And then in some video, in some documentaries, there's a needle kit, and in some documentaries there isn't anything. In some documentaries there's no needle kit. And then there's the cops stated that there was a balloon with heroin in a balloon with heroin inside of it, you know, on the kitchen counter. So they're saying that the fact that there was nothing found. I think they're trying to have it both ways. They're trying to say, but you can't have it both ways. I think they're trying to say that there's this gap in time, which I think now I think about it, they're just creating that for the documentary, for the docudrama, which is scripted, which is weird for a scripted documentary, a documentary to be scripted. But anyway, so I think they're creating a scenario about the fact that the drugs aren't there in case somebody like me finds out that there were no drugs. So remember the Showtime special is based on their theories. These are our theories. Okay? So again, a theory is not proof. It's not scientific. It's almost like, you know, it's like Shaun is a conspiracy theorist. He's not really a investigative journalist, because if he was an investigative journalist, he'd have all the official records and he'd have all the facts, but he doesn't. So he's just guessing. So he's saying, okay, let's say we found out the drugs aren't there. So she hid them. She must have hid them. If it finds out, the truth comes out down the road that the drugs are not in the house. I said that there's a time gap between when Geraldine found Sonny and when she called the cops. But Geraldine Liston said she never called the cops. That's what she said from the day Sonny died until the day she died. That's what last thing she told me was she never called the cops. She never saw Dennis Caputo there. She never saw Gary Beckwith there. She never saw Larry Gandy there. She didn't discuss Larry Gandy because he never appeared in the Showtime specials or any kind of documentaries prior to that. I've never even heard of Larry Gandy until Showtime special, and so he wasn't there because she didn't even bring him up. But she's seen these guys show up later, and like the documentaries that happened later, like in the 90s and prior to the 90s. She said these guys that were in the documentaries later, she said they weren't at the house. Dennis Caputo, Gary Beckwith, Dennis A. Weidmann, and Larry Gandy. She said she didn't see those guys at the house. She said not only did she not see those guys at the house, she said she didn't call the police. Okay, so we're gonna try to figure all this out, right? So I think what's happening is the Showtime special, Simon George, the director and writer, and SHAUN, since they're theorizing, it doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. The facts don't matter. Since they're it's basically they're conspiracy theorists. So the fantasy and logic don't go together in fantasy, right? In fantasy, you can say 2 + 2 = 5. It doesn't matter. It's fantasy. But you can't, in logic, you can't say 2 + 2 = 5. You have to say 2 + 2 = 4. So you got to realize you're not dealing with logic when you're dealing with these type of documentaries about Sonny and books about Sonny, editorial copy about Sonny. You're dealing with fantasy. You're dealing with theories that aren't scientific and don't have to deal with logic. Okay, so he can say things like, okay, I'm gonna invent this time gap because in case there's no drugs found, we gotta create a scenario where, okay, why aren't the drugs there? So they basically wrote a scenario, a theory, into the script, saying that, let's say there's no drugs. They found out there's no drugs. So let's say let's theorize, what if there was no drugs? Well, let's say that she hid them. Let's say Geraldine Liston hid the drugs because she was trying to protect Sonny. So that's one way. Let's say they find drugs. So they're saying both. They're saying, what if they're not there, and what if they are there? Right? Because in the same documentary, scripted documentary, they say that the drugs are there, that the cops found. Because you have Larry Gandy saying it, you have Dennis Caputo saying it, you have Gary Beckwith saying it, and you have Dennis A. Weidmann saying it from the past documentaries. And then in some documentaries, there are no cops at all that show up. So they've kind of painted themselves in a corner over the years because they've spent so many years telling these stories. So they have to stick to the script. It's almost like they can't tell the truth anymore because they spent so much time telling this same story over and over again. So they kind of have to stick to the script, and then reinvent it as they go. So I'm going to read from the script, and remember, we have these two scenarios. We have these scenarios that we have to think about. Geraldine Liston said she didn't call the cops. That's one. Larry Gandy, Dennis Caputo, Gary Beckwith, and Dennis A. Weidmann said they found drugs, and some of them said they found a needle kit in the past. And then there's a possibility that there were no drugs. So when you theorizing, you don't need facts, you don't need evidence, right? It's anecdotal. You can make assumptions. That's why this story of Sonny can go on and on and on and on for 40 years, and you don't need any facts because it's all about conspiracy theories and fantasy and what ifs. It's like, again, it's a mystery puzzle. They're creating a mystery puzzle, and it's a whodunit because of whodunit for the audience. You're like, oh my God, let's see what happens. Oh my God, there's drugs, but there could be drugs. But what if there isn't? And then everybody starts to have a discussion, and it's all over the internet, and everybody has their own theories, and everybody's got these podcasts about it, and everybody's got these like blogs about it, and YouTube channels about it, and it's gone on forever. I mean, you look up Sonny Liston. There's all kinds of. It's unbelievable how many conspiracy theorists are talking about the Ali Liston fights, how Sonny died. It's just ridiculous. But anyway, so sorry, conspiracy theorists. Sorry, no hard feelings. But in any case, let's get through this because we have so much to talk about. So I'm going to read from the Showtime specials, Pariah, the lives and deaths of Sonny Liston. The lives and deaths of Sonny Liston. So it's kind of like he's like a zombie, you know, like he's like the living dead. He never dies. Anyway, the title, that's what it reminds me of, a zombie. The lives and deaths of Sonny Liston. Anyway, let me just find the passage. Hopefully I can find this thing before you guys. Okay, here we go. So Shaun ASSAEL's executive producer of the show, and he's actually in the documentary theorizing about what would happen. You know, so this is him talking. He says, December 1970, Sonny's out of control. I have no idea what he means by that, but anyway. Geraldine goes to visit her family in St. Louis. It's the last time she sees him alive. Geraldine comes home from vacation, smells something, doesn't know what it is, goes from one room to another, follows the smell up to her bedroom, where she finds her husband slumped backwards in an advanced state of decomposition. She races out of the house and she races out of the house to the nearby neighbor's home of a friend. Oh, to the home of a friend. They come back to the house at around 9 p.m. There it is. So remember that time frame. 9 p.m. is what he's saying. He's saying they came back at 9. Okay, 9 p.m. It's not until midnight. So he's saying she came back at 9, but it's not until midnight they make the first call to the police. So it kind of, because they're creating a theory, the truth doesn't matter. It's not about the truth. They're not trying to sell you the truth. They're trying to sell you the theory. They don't want to hear the truth. They don't make money off the truth. They can theorize till kingdom come, and that's what they've been doing since Sonny died. Since even when he was alive, they were theorizing about his birthday, right? That supposedly there was no record of. Okay, so we're not dealing with. Remember, we're dealing with fantasy. Fantasy. There's no logic necessary, right? With logic, 2 plus 2 equals 4. With fantasy, 2 plus 2 equals 5. Okay. So this is the Larry Gandy character, because he's no longer, because Larry Gandy was a cop, Las Vegas cop, but now he's an actor who plays himself. So he doesn't have to abide by any rules because he's an actor playing himself. That makes no sense to me. But so he actually is an actor. His IDMB, his acting title on the show. His title on the show is actor. So anyway, this is him entering the house, stating that he's the first to arrive to find Sonny. There was sheriff's deputies running all over the place like ants. Remember, he's saying that there's so many. I mean, think of ants running all over the place, like an anthill. That's how many cops he's saying that were there. They were everywhere. Let's talk about the cops. It was gruesome. He had obviously been dead for 4 or 5 days because he was literally full of methane gas. It was real bad. I don't really know how to explain it. Here's one of your childhood heroes laying there bloated, and that just, I thought it was a terrible, disrespectful way for him to go and not be found. So it was startling. So that's Larry Gandy stating that, trying to say he was there uh, at the house. Okay, so we got a time frame of 9 p.m. to 12 p.m. to 12 a.m. Right? Um, that the Showtime special is saying that drugs were Geraldine could have hid the drugs, but at the same time, they're stating in the same documentary that there were drugs found on the scene. So again, these two things can't be they can't coincide at the same time, because you can't have something there and not be there. But that's what since they're theorizing, it doesn't matter. The truth doesn't matter. Reality doesn't matter. Take reality out of throw it out the window. Okay. Now here's the reality. There's the coroner's report. See how clear it is? See how clear the coroner's report, the information, how clear, there's no age lines running through it? Or is that one? Yeah, I don't know what that is. But it's not blocking any of the information, and the information is very clear. This is the coroner's report. Okay, so let's start from the top. Date 1671. Date of the report 1671. Victim Charles Sonny Liston. Address 2058 Ottawa, Las Vegas, Nevada. Type of death. Since they're doing a post-mortem, there's a reason why they have to do the post-mortem. So we'll find that out in a few minutes. Type of death: accident, homicide, suicide, or natural. They don't know at that point because they have to find out if this is a crime scene or not. So they're still doing the investigation of who's at the house right now, who they're interviewing. They're looking at the situation. So they can't really check boxes right now. I mean, if he had a knife in his neck, Sonny had a knife in his neck, then they would say, "Hey, this is suspicious. How did that happen?" So it's a possibility they could have checked homicide, or they could have checked suicide, right? But at this particular moment, they haven't decided. Okay, what happened? They haven't interviewed everyone at this point. Time of death before 12:20. All right, a.m. So remember that time frame. Location 2058 Ottawa Drive, Las Vegas, Nevada. Found by wife. Pronounced by Dr. Cabin. Date 1571. Time 11:30 p.m. So they found him. Type of death. They found time of death was before 12:20 a.m. and found by wife at 11:30 p.m. So how many minutes is that? Is that 3 hours? I don't think so. Reported by John Cotting, Palm Mortuary. Date 1571. Time 11:50 p.m. So you have 11:30 and you have 11:50. Okay. Description: male, race Negro, age 38, height, weight, hair black, eyes brown, build big, heavy. Date of birth May 8th, 1932. So everyone outside of the government agencies knows Sonny's birth date, but those writing books, movies, editorial copy, they seem to have amnesia, and they can't fathom. They can't even when Sonny and Geraldine tell them when Sonny was born, they somehow they just can't believe it. So clothing. So he had a white T-shirt on and blue shorts. So in Sean's book, Sean states that Sonny had an erection, which is really odd thing to write about. I mean, why would you write that? What kind of what anyway? So it's kind of strange and sick and weird that you write something like that. That Sean would write something like that. But it's not in the Showtime special, but it's in his book. So it says occupation ex-boxer heavyweight. Relatives: Geraldine Liston, wife, 2058 Ottawa, Las Vegas. Daughter Arleta Gardner, that's my aunt. Sonny helped raise my dad, Robert Lee Gardner, and my uncle Charles Gardner, and Arleta Gardner. Charles Gardner was my uncle, and my dad was Robert Lee Gardner. And Arleta was living in Las Vegas at the time. Notified by, discovered by Mrs. Liston. Not Larry Gandy, not Dennis Caputo, not Dennis A. Weidmann, not Gary Beckwith. On 1/5/71. Witnesses: Dr. W. J. Cavan, 2300 Rancho Road, Las Vegas. Bernice T. Heath, the neighbor, 1428 Aztec Way, Las Vegas. Okay, here's the narrative summary, okay? It's narrative summary of circumstances. Received call from the chief deputy coroner, who had received call from Rocky Mountain News in Denver, Colorado, and Review Journal in Las Vegas, inquiring about the death of Sonny Liston. John Cotting, a Palm mortuary, had also received a call from Review Journal at approximately 11:30 p.m. 1/5/71. At approximately 11:40, that's only 10 minutes now. At approximately 11:40 p.m., Cotting received call from Dr. Cavan requesting a removal. So at 11:40, Cotting received call from Dr. Cavan requesting a removal. Okay, so that's 10 minutes that they found out about Sonny. Cotting learned that the descendant was Liston. Dr. Cavan advised he did not know the cause of death. Cotting then advised the coroner's office. The coroner's office advised the CCSO, the Clark County Sheriff's Office. So Geraldine has always said, I didn't call the police. And there it is right there in black and white. The coroner's office called the sheriff's department, not Geraldine. So that means that the sheriffs and the coroner's office came together. So that makes sense because the cops have to come to make sure it's not a crime scene. But we still don't know what cops were there. We need to find that out. Now we know that there wasn't the theory that there was a 3-hour gap of time from 9 to 12 is made up by Showtime, SHAUN, ASSAEL, and the director Simon George. He wrote it. So since the documentary is scripted, that means he wrote it intentionally in the script, right? This investigator arrived and observed descendant with feet on floor, buttocks on bench, at foot of bed, and torso and head on bed. Descendant was in a bloated condition and gas was escaping from his nose. These are things that could have been talked about at the press briefing by Dr. Herman after Sonny died. So this is probably public information in this part. Blood appeared to have come from the nose, and it appeared that blood had soaked and dried in the bedspread at the descendant's head. Descendant's fingers appeared dehydrated. By the Clark County Sheriff's Office advised that they had responded to ID Bureau and would be taking some photographs. So this investigator proceeded to talk to Mrs. Heath. Mrs. Heath, a close friend of the family, advised that she last saw Liston on 12/26/70 at her home. Liston had taken his wife to the airport that day, whereupon she flew to St. Louis. Liston's hat and a Las Vegas Sun newspaper dated 12/28/70 were found in the basement bar. So there was no drugs found. No weed, no drug kit, no needle kit, excuse me, and no no bag of heroin in his pocket at the time of death. On this date, Mrs. Liston returned home and found the house locked. Mrs. Liston advised Mrs. Heath that she had been unable to contact Sonny Liston via phone during her absence. Upon entering the house, Mrs. Liston found the descendant in the bedroom as described. Mrs. Liston went to Mrs. Heath's home. Mrs. Heath contacted a Dr. Kenneth Turner. So again, no one called the police, who apparently is Mrs. Liston's doctor. Dr. Turner was unavailable, so Mrs. Turner had Dr. Cavan respond. So Dr. Cavan got the ball rolling. Okay, you got the cops there. So so we see what the Sonny Liston myth is all about. It's theories. It's not facts. They're not creating the facts. They're creating theories. They've always created. These are all theories, and it doesn't matter what they say in these documentaries and this editorial copy over the years, these movies. It doesn't matter because they're all theorizing, and we're all buying into fantasy. I mean, what's the biggest film in the world? Star Wars. So we love fantasy, right? We love escapism, but the reality of this is that we have to deal with those lies and those and that innuendo and the speculation. The Sonny Liston estate has to deal with the idea that people may think that Sonny was a rapist, Sonny was a drug dealer, Sonny had these illegitimate kids. There's nothing they can't say in these stories. That there's no boundaries. There's no limits to what they can say because it's fantasy. So they can talk about Sonny having an erection at the time of death. They can talk about Sonny having slept with, had a child with out of wedlock. I mean, they can talk about anything. They could, and as long as you buy them, as long as you buy their books and their movies and buy their newspapers, they're gonna keep selling it to you. So the public has to decide whether they want fantasy or whether they want the truth. If they want to escape or they want to deal with reality. That's the choice. I'd rather deal with reality. Anyway, so then you have arrived at 12:28 in the investigator coroner's office. H. Bow. He's the investigator. I guess he overlooks what everything that's happened prior to him getting there. That's H. Bow, B-O-W-E. The mortuary called, and so he just edits everything down to this part. Mortuary called Palm by Dr. Cavan. Time 11:50 p.m. It says hold for medical exam. These are the choices. This is what they've decided. This is why Bow is there. Okay, what are we gonna do? What's I've heard what everybody's side. I've heard the sheriffs. I've heard everyone's interviews. Everyone's been interviewed. Okay, he's assessed the situation. And then he's just now the investigative coroner comes in and says, okay, what's the next move? Is it going to be an exam? Is it going to be an autopsy? We're going to do toxicology. What are we going to do? It says here X marks autopsy. So they're going to take the body. They're going to take Sonny's body and they're going to do an autopsy. And that is let's see, arterial. I don't know, arterial green. I don't know what that means. 1671. So the pathologist, medical pathologist was called, examiner, called Dr. Clark. They're saying that Dr. Clark was called at 8:20 a.m. Officers on the case. So this is it. This is the facts right here. What officers were there? And the names of the officers from the Clark County Sheriff's Office. Clark County Sheriff's Office was Officer Spence Lemon and Colt Albright. That's it, right? And then everyone that's there has even Palm. They needed an ID affidavit. So here's the cops that were there. Bottom. Okay, there's no Gary Beckwith. There's no Dennis Caputo. There's no Dennis A. Wyman. I think it's Dennis A. Wyman. I could be wrong about the first name, but I think it's Dennis A. Wyman. And there's no Larry Gandy. See that? And that's the investigative coroner who makes that. He takes everything and makes his final findings at the bottom here. Once all the investigation is over. Okay, so there is no other officers there. That's why when Geraldine Liston said she didn't see Larry Gandy, she didn't see. Larry Gandy didn't really exist until the Showtime special. She didn't see Dennis Caputo. She didn't see, and she said that in other documentaries. She didn't see Dennis Caputo, Larry Gandy, or Gary Beckwith at the house. And as you can see, the reason why she didn't see those people there is because they weren't there. There it is right there. Those are the two officers that were there. Now I'm going to read the investigative worksheet, which is basically an outline. It doesn't have all the, this is the coroner's report. Look how in-depth it is. So this is just a worksheet. So it's not going to have all the names, right, of everyone from the coroner's report. It's just like a notation. Okay. So let's see if I get this right. Okay, let's see. Let me make sure I read this in order. Okay, let's start here. All right, Clark County Coroner's Office investigation worksheet. So this is like a summary. Date and time call received 1/15/71, 11:50 p.m. Scene of call 2058 Ottawa Drive, Las Vegas. Call received from John Cotting, Palm Mortuary. Investigative coroner H. Bowe, B-O-W-E. Officers on scene Spence Lemon, and Call Albright. And it says others. That means the other people, not other officers. The other people in the coroner's report. It's all there. All the names are there, right? All the names are already there in the coroner's report. They don't have room to put it in the worksheet. Okay, it's just a summary. So they just said others. They already know who they're talking about because it's in the coroner's report. All right. Mrs. Heath and close friend of the family advised that she last saw Liston on 12/26/70 at her home. Liston had taken his wife to the airport that day, whereupon she flew to St. Louis. Liston's hat and a Las Vegas Sun newspaper dated 12/28/70 were found in the basement, not drugs. On this date, Mrs. Liston returned home and found the house locked. Mrs. Liston advised Mrs. Heath that she had been unable to contact Sonny Liston via phone during his absence. Upon entering the house, Mrs. Liston found the descendant in the bedroom and as described. So he says as described. So he's by saying that he's referring to the coroner's report. So he doesn't have to restate that like he does, like when it says Officers Spence, Lemon, and Carl Albright and others. He doesn't. They know who he's talking about. From the others is the people in the coroner's report. So don't get confused that means these other officers like Beckwith and all those guys. It's just a summary. All right. So let's see. Mrs. Liston advised Mrs. Heath that she had been unable to contact Sonny Liston. Let's see. Is that the right place? The day where she flew to. Let's start there. She flew to St. Louis. Liston's hat and a Las Vegas Sun newspaper dated 12/28/70 were found in the basement. The basement bar. On this date, Mrs. Liston returned home and found the house locked. Mrs. Liston advised Mrs. Heath that she had been unable to contact Sonny Liston via phone during her absence. Upon entering the house, Mrs. Liston found the descendant in the bedroom as described. So he doesn't have to describe it again. Mrs. Liston went to Mrs. Heath's home. Mrs. Heath contacted Dr. Kenneth. What is it, Kenneth? I can't read it because it's in cursive. But you can go back and the names on the other report. I think it's Kenneth Turner. If that cursive writing is right. Who apparently is Mrs. Liston's doctor, Dr. Turner. Is it Dr. Turner? What is it? Let me see. Dr. Yeah, just go back. It's Dr. Turner. There it is. Yeah, Dr. Turner. See how they're referring to the coroner's report from the worksheet? As described, Mrs. Liston went back to Heath's home. Mrs. Heath contacted Dr. Turner, who apparently is Mrs. Liston's doctor. Dr. Turner was unavailable, so Mrs. Turner had Dr. Cavan respond. And you know what? From the coroner's report, you know what happened next once Dr. Cavan was informed. And there's just one more worksheet we got to read, and then we're done with this part of the autopsy report. This is the other Clark County Coroner's Office investigative worksheet. 1571, 11:50 p.m. 2058 Ottawa, Las Vegas. Let's see. Call received from John Cotting, Palm Mortuary, investigative coroner. This is like page 2. Okay. Investigative coroner H. Bowe, B-O-W-E. Officers on scene: Spence, Lemon, and Carl Albright, and others referring to the coroner's report. Details: on Thanksgiving Day of 1970, Liston had been involved in a traffic accident and was hospitalized for 3 or 4 days and treated by a Dr. Browning. Now there is this another theory that Geraldine always stated that Sonny didn't like needles. No one likes needles. Okay, so she was just making a general statement. Sonny didn't like needles. That didn't mean he didn't get blood work done. He had to get blood work again. He had to get blood work because boxers get cut and boxers bleed, and they have pre-fight examinations. And they want to make sure that the boxers that fight don't get hepatitis. So they have to do blood work. So here's an example of another reason why Sonny flew all over the world to fight. So he had to get shots. People that travel know that. Do global travel know that you got to get shots depending on what country you go to. So there was a rumor that because Sonny had needle marks. So it's inconclusive, right? It's not. It's that when they did a postmortem, Doctor Clark said, "Oh, that looks like a scar, but it kind of looks like a needle mark." But it was inconclusive, and so they said, "Well, so the theory is if Jody says he didn't like needles, so why did he have needle marks?" Right? That's how they turn it around. So they turn around and say, "Well, he had needle marks, so he must have been a drug addict." She's just hiding. She's just trying to distract us from the truth. It's a stupid argument. Why do you conclude that because he has needle marks, he's a heroin, he's a drug addict? In any case, and also the rumor is that everybody knows he got in a car accident, but he spent 7 to 9 days in the hospital, so they got that wrong too. Um, Sonny was hospitalized for 3 or 4 days and treated by a Dr. Browning. So he went to the doctor for 3 or 4 days because he was complaining of chest pains. So they're going to have to give him blood work at the hospital. So he had blood work before he died. If you have chest pains, they're going to do blood work at the hospital. So before he died, and this accident happened before he died, he must have had blood work. So maybe that's why he had what looked like a needle mark in his arm. The Clark County Sheriff's Office found on the kitchen counter. Now this is what it's all about. This is what the myth, the whole myth that started the whole story of drugs. This is it right here. This is why people believe all over the world that Sonny was a drug addict. That Sonny could have been killed by the mafia with a hot dose of heroin mixed with cocaine, or Sonny used and sold drugs. And the whole Las Vegas SHAUN ASSAEL book is based on Sonny's so-called drug addiction and the fact that he became a dealer before he died, and that he was running drugs in the west side, on the west side of Las Vegas. Sonny didn't hang around black thugs. He didn't have Geraldine Liston's Cadillac didn't have a phone in it. There's no phone records. Show me the phone records. Give it to me. Hand me the phone records of the car phone communication. I think there's a DA. I think there's a DA in the show that says, I think Shaun says it, or the DA says there's phone records or some shit. But show me the goddamn records. Put it in my hand. I challenge you. And then I'll do my own investigation. Sons of bitches. Anyway, the CCSO found on the kitchen. This is the story that's been told over the decades. They found on the kitchen counter a small blue balloon. Remember, this is the balloon they've been talking about for decades that was filled with heroin. The Clark County Sheriff's Office found on the kitchen counter a small blue balloon which had been tied in a knot, but the side was split open. It was believed the balloon contained heroin. That's all these years. That's what it's all been about. A balloon that was on the kitchen counter. Don't balloons pop? Where's the residue, the heroin residue? Where's the lab work that said there was heroin in that balloon? Did the balloon did it say on the balloon for heroin? Because believing is like, what is belief? That's like, again, that's like having some type of, it's almost like fortune telling, right? So there was no drugs. As a result of the Clark County Sheriff's Office discovery, the descendant was placed in a bag, it's just a body bag, and locked in the refrigerator at Palm Mortuary because it was like 3 or 4 days before they found him. Left 2058 Ottawa at 11:15 a.m. Sonny was locked in the refrigerator at 1:28 a.m. The Clark County Sheriff's Office remained on the scene to do further investigation because they don't know if it's a crime scene or not. That's why the cops were there. So there you have it. That's another uh, part of the um, autopsy report that's been revealed, and now we know that there were no drugs. Thank you so much. I'll see you again soon.